Hello there, and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
We are in the chapel, as you see. We've set up a nice little Seder dinner table, and we're welcoming you to our little Seder.
Or we should say thank you for welcoming us into your home and into your Seder.
And we're privileged to be there. I'd like to start this year's Seder with a meditation that was written by Rachel Barenblatt. The three-legged stool of the Jewish year rests on the Shalosh Regalim, the three great festivals which were once occasions for pilgrimages to the temple in Jerusalem. The festivals map to stages in an individual life. Now think of it. The festival of Pesach is kind of a birth. Shavuot, which the mystics understood as the date of the marriage between the Jewish people and God, represents adulthood. And Sukkot, the harvest festival, celebrates fruition before we wind down into the stillness of a life's winter, and then we come around to Pesach again. Pesach is the festival of new creation. Shavuot, the festival of revelation, and Sukkot, the festival of redemption. Each year we move from birth to maturity to completion, and after each fallow winter we find ourselves born again, if you will. And Pesach is step one, a new beginning. Pesach is Chag HaAviv, the festival of spring. In the northern hemisphere, it's the season of lambing, first flowers, new green, a season of birth and increasing light. Birth is a leitmotif in the Passover story. Pharaoh orders the Israelite firstborns killed, and then the midwives Shiphrah and Puah defy him. And the first act of resistance, which midwives the new narrative in the being. The 10 plagues can be seen as contractions, preparing us to leave Egypt's once comfortable but now constricting little womb. Together we pass from the constriction of Mitzrayim through the birth canal of the Sea of Reeds and into the wide expansiveness of freedom. We're starting over, all of us together. In the temple of old, 15 steps led up to the altar where we brought korbanot, sacrifices, which drew us near to the Holy Blessed One. The Seder we celebrate now unfolds through 15 steps, a chance to make intangible offerings on the altar of our hearts. On this festival of spring, what are you bringing? What are you bringing to draw you near? Having come through the Sea of Reeds, what songs will you sing? Well, I think this is a good place to sing the table of contents to tonight's proceedings. Cantor.
Thank you. So we are using a Haggadah this evening, Passover Haggadah, the Feast of Freedom, the one with the construction paper illustrations. If you're using that, fantastic. We'll announce pages. But if you're not, it's okay. That's what a Haggadah is. That's what a Seder means order. And so as long as all Seders are structured the same way.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you can find where we're at in your own personal Haggadah. And by the way, because this is a broadcast, feel free to pause or, if necessary, fast forward. We're here to make your Seder special.
Yeah, but we wanted to make one note so you don't get confused while you're following us. And that is that since we're recording this before the holiday, we're not going to mention God's name. What I'll do is when I'm saying a prayer that involves God's name, I'll just pause and I'll kind of go like this, which gives you a chance at home to insert God's name, or of course recite the prayer with me, but it'll make it unique and special for that sacred time that you're celebrating your Passover Seder. Right.
So we're beginning on page 22. Like I said, a Seder means order, and there's an order to what we're doing. This is, like the rabbi used to say, this is the one time we actually sing a table of contents.
That's right.
Kind of unusual. But here's a melody. A lot of these melodies that I'm going to share with you, I learned in my childhood, either at school or maybe they're a family tradition. And this one goes like this. Kadesh orchatz karpas yachatz magid rachza motzi matzah maror korech shochan orech tzafun barech halel nirtzah. There you have it, the 15 steps of the Seder.
Like the 15 steps at the temple. Tonight, we're going to drink 4 glasses of wine. Why 4? Some say the cups represent our matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, whose virtue caused God to liberate us from slavery. Another interpretation that the cups represent 4 worlds of physicality, emotions, thought, and essence. It's a Kabbalistic concept. And there's a third interpretation that the cups represent the 4 promises of liberation that God makes in the Torah. I will bring you out, I will deliver you, I will redeem you, and I will take you to be my people. The 4 promises in return have been interpreted as 4 stages in the path of liberation: becoming aware of oppression, opposing oppression, imagining alternatives, and accepting the responsibility to act. The first cup of wine reminds us of God's first declaration, V'hotzeti, I will bring you out from oppression. So we're going to fill our cups now.
All right, we have some wine in our cups.
We're all set to go. So if you need to pause while you pour yourself a cup of wine, go ahead and we'll meet you right here as soon as you do. Welcome back.
Do you want to talk about being Saturday night? We'll recite something for Havdalah.
Yes, on Saturday in the Kiddush is the Havdalah, the necessary ingredients or the necessary components of the Havdalah prayer. The Havdalah is what separates the Sabbath from the rest of the week. And even when the Sabbath runs into, Shabbat runs into a holiday, you still make a difference, not between Kodesh and Chol, but between Kodesh and Kodesh, between holy and holy.
So you'll see the Kiddush is going to be found on pages 24 and 26. Top of 26, it references Moreh Ha'esh, fire. So we don't have fire in front of us, but if you do, you have a candle.
Candle, yeah.
I
hope you lit your candles first.
Yeah, you'll have the fire there. So let's do Kiddush. I invite, before we rise, it's been my tradition to sing a little song that's like a prelude to Kiddush. I'll do it, we have 4 cups. I'll do it this one time for the first cup. Probably won't remember it by the time we get to the 3rd cup, or 4th. But it goes like this. Hineni muchanum zuman, hineni muchanum zuman, hineni muchanum zuman, l'kayem mitzvot kosh rishon. Kema shekatuv b'Torah, hineni muchanum zuman, kema shekatuv b'Torah, hineni muchanum zuman. So now I invite you to rise and join me. And like I said, we won't be saying God's name. You can insert that when I give you the signal. Okay. Sofrai Maranan, Baruch Atah, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei peri hagafen. Baruch Atah, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher bachar banu mikol am, v'romamanu mikol lashon, v'kiddushan v'mitzvotav. V'titein lanu, Eloheinu b'yava, Moadim l'simcha, chagim zmanim l'sasod. Et yom chag hamatzot hazeh, zman chevertenu, mikra kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim. Kivanu v'acharta v'tanu gedashtu mikol ha'amim. Moadei godjecha b'simcha b'sasod, hinchatanu. Baruch atah, Mekadesh Yisrael, v'hazmanim. For Havdalah, Baruch atah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei moreh ha'esh. Baruch atah, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael l'amim. Ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshit yemei ha'maseh, ben kedushat Shabbat l'kedushat yom tov hivdalta, ben yom hashvi'i m'sheshit yemei ha'maseh, kidashta. Hivdalta v'kidashta et amcha Yisrael b'kedushatecha, Baruch atah. Hamavdil ben kodesh lekodesh. Baruch atah. Eloheinu melech haolam. Shehechianu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
If you insist.
Oh, and I do. So we recline as we drink. Reclining is a sign of opulence or luxury.
The symbol of freedom.
Symbol of freedom. And one thing you might note about the Seder is, as we have this banquet as it is, parts of it mimic Greco-Roman banquet, because the aristocracy or the well-to-do in Greco-Roman times would have such banquets. And since they were well-to-do and aristocratic, as free people now, as celebrating freedom, sometimes we like to emulate some of their practices, just as a matter of symbolism.
Right.
So they reclined and we reclined.
And, yeah, there was the people who did those things were citizens, and to be a citizen, a free person, there were some more requirements than we have today, like owning land and probably a few people. Now we move on to Orchatz, right?
Yeah.
Orchatz. Now, you might think that this is the year that we've had enough of washing our hands, but we still have a few times to do it tonight. I saw one thing where it had Kadesh, Orchatz, what's the next one?
Karpas.
Karpas, Orchatz.
Yes, you won't see any hand sanitizer on our Seder table tonight. Okay?
No.
Just so you know that.
You know, but we'll wash them to the bone, though.
Yeah.
Now we're going to symbolically, Orchatz means and the washing. The symbolic washing of the hands recalls the story of Miriam's well. Legends tell us that this well followed Miriam, sister of Moses, through the desert, sustaining the Jews in their wanderings, filled with Mayim Chayim, or Maimei Chayim, waters of life. The well was a source of strength and renewal to all who drew from it. One drink from its waters was said to alert the heart, mind, and soul and make the beginning and the meaning of Torah become more clear. In Hebrew, Orchatz means washing or cleansing. In Aramaic, Hebrew's sister language, Orchatz means trusting. And we're going to wash each other's hands, like the Levites would wash the Kohanim hands, and we'll rejoice in this act of mutual trust. When we wash hands again later, just before eating the meal, we'll say blessings to sanctify that act. Because the feast is still a few pages away, this hand washing is purely symbolic, and therefore the blessing is unspoken. So the first thing here.
You're going to wash your hands?
Yep. Watch out the matzah there. Okay, no blessing. Lelo bracha.
You want to try your hand? Okay, let's get this out of the way.
Yeah. The first of the many towels. And here we go. Okay.
All right.
Now, one of the things about this well of Miriam's that you find in the Midrash, it's not in the Torah, is that the reason that they think that this well existed was because when Miriam passed away, when Miriam died in the desert, the next thing that happens, the people said to Moses, "We're thirsty. We haven't got any water." So they figured, well, they must have had water before Miriam died, and so when she passed, the well went with her. So that's how they figured that one out. And now we're going to eat a green vegetable.
So on our Seder plate, we have this little parsley.
Parsley.
Most of the time you see parsley on a plate, it's just a decoration.
Yeah, it's just there so you can throw it away.
Yeah. Add a little color to the palette on the plate. But here, we dip it in salt water.
Right.
Salt water, of course, representing tears.
The tears of enslavement. Okay. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah.
That's good salt water.
Now, when you anticipate that it might be a while before you have your actual meal because of the Seder, and that's when parsley and salt water becomes very appetizing.
Now, you can have all kinds of vegetables. Green vegetables just means fresh vegetables. You can cut up carrots and peppers and, whatever you like. And you can, that serves as the hors d'oeuvres for the meal. That serves to keep you from, starving. You know all the stories about when do we eat, when do we eat, when do we eat, when do we eat. Well, you can eat.
Yeah.
Just don't have the meal yet.
Just have to eat like a rabbit, that's all.
Nothing wrong with a vegetarian diet.
Exactly.
Okay, now, we do yachatz is next.
Let me get this out of the way. You want to hold the matzah?
Yeah, go ahead and get that out of the way. under this fine silk cloth that came all the way from China. We have 3 matzot here. And we open the door. You want to get up and open that door?
Sure.
Yeah. As a sign of hospitality, we lift up the matzah for everybody to see. And we say, "This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are needy come and celebrate the Passover with us. Now we are free. Next year may we be in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves. Next year may we be free." And there's a tune that goes with this.
Yeah, I'm on page 30 of our Haggadah. I like to sing this. Halach ma an yadi achalu avatana be'ara d'Mitzrayim be'ara d'Mitzrayim kod ichvinete ve'yecho kod itzrichete ve'yivsav Hashatacha v'shana haba be'arad Yisrael Hashatavnei v'shana haba b'nei chorim. And you'll notice that we're singing this. You might think we're singing Hebrew. It might sound like that, but it's actually Aramaic. And the reason we sing Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic, this is the bread of affliction, is because that was the language that many Jews at the time understood.
Right.
Just like we do things in English today. So the rabbis wanted to make sure, as we talk about this is the land, bread of affliction, which our ancestors
And
ate.
we're inviting people to come and eat.
Exactly.
We want them to know what we're saying.
So this is actually done in Aramaic. So I'm going to shut the door, okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Now what we're going to do as soon as the cantor gets back is we're going to break the matzah as we broke the chains of slavery and as we break chains which bind us today. We will no more be fooled by movements which free only some of us, in which our so-called freedom rests upon the enslavement or the embitterment of others. Now traditionally, Seders require 3 pieces of matzah, 3 matzot. Why 3? 3 are our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 3 are the segments of the people of Israel, Cohen, Levi, and Yisrael. And the 3 matzot could even represent thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, little Hegelian matzah. The 2 opposites in any polarized situation and the solution which bridges them.
And if my kids might say 3 are the hours it's going to take before we have actually our meal, you know.
They can have some vegetables. Okay, so trying to get this perfect. Now we take the larger half and we wrap it up in this fine silk cloth here. That's a lot of butterflies. All right. And we will hide this during one of our commercial breaks.
Let me put this up here. So here is our afikomen.
And the afikomen is like technically the dessert. Now, I don't know how many of you think of matzah as a dessert, but what it did was it started the meal and it'll finish the meal. And you can't finish it without it. So if it goes missing, it's got to be found. So now it's a magid.
So we start with the manishtana?
Well, yeah, we'll get to the manishtana. I like this. This is a story, you know, Haggadah means the telling. And it's a great story. Movies have been made out of it. Charlton Heston, Christian Bale, and Steven Spielberg.
Not bad.
Not bad company to be in. As well as a few, Cecil B. DeMille, and a few others. But the story is to tell you who you are. So listen to this story about modern Hasidism. The founder of modern Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov, saw misfortune threatening the Jews. It was his custom, whenever he saw this, it was his custom to go to a certain part of the forest to meditate. And there he would light a special fire and say a special prayer, and the trouble would be averted. Later, when his disciple, the Rabbi Maggid of Metzrich, had occasion for the same reason to intercede with heaven, he would go to the same place in the forest and say, Master of the universe, listen, I cannot light the fire, but I know the place and I can say the prayer. And it just had to do, and it worked. And still later, Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sassov, in order to save the Jewish people, would go into the forest and say, I can't light the fire, I don't know the prayer, but I know the place. And that had to do. And then it fell to Rabbi Israel of Rizin to overcome misfortune. Sitting in his house, his head in his hands, he spoke to God, I am unable to light the fire, I do not know the prayer, I can't even find the place in the forest, all I can do is tell the story, and this must be sufficient. And it was. Just enough. We start with the 4 questions, and the rest of this is the longest section of the Haggadah. We'll be explaining the answers to these 4 questions. Questions are really a big part of being Jewish. I want to, not this one. Yeah. Isidore I. Rabi, the Nobel laureate in physics, was once asked, why did you become a scientist rather than a doctor or a lawyer or a businessman like the other immigrant kids in your neighborhood? And his answer was, I think, fascinating. My mother made me a scientist without ever intending it. Every other Jewish mother in Brooklyn would ask her child after school, "Nu, did you learn anything today?" But not my mother. She always asked me a different question. Izzy, she said, did you ask a good question today? And that difference, asking good questions, made me become a scientist. So let's go over these 4 questions. They have a tune.
Yes, we're on page 32 and 33 of the Haggadah we're using.
And it's traditional that the youngest person at the table gets to ask these questions.
And we're a big believer in tradition, so
Zev?
thank you, Rabbi. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot
Mikol haleilot
shebechol haleilot anu ochlin chametzu matzah chametzu matzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah Shebechol halelot anu ochlim she'ar yirakot halayla hazeh maror halayla hazeh maror Shebechol halelot einanu matbilin afilu pa'am echad halayla hazeh shetei ve'amim halayla hazeh shetei ve'amim shebechol halelot adu ochlin bein yoshvinu ve'in misubin halayla hazeh kulanu misubin halayla hazeh kulanu misubin.
How is this night different from any other night? On all other nights we eat either chametz or matzah. On this night we only eat matzah. On all other nights we eat all kinds of vegetables. Why on this night do we eat bitter herbs? On all other nights we don't usually dip vegetables even once. Why do we dip twice tonight? And on other nights we eat either sitting upright or reclining. Why on this night do we eat reclining? And then we start telling the story.
Right, and again, we're asking questions just like they would do sort of in the Socratic method, asking questions to...
The symposium.
Yeah, to
generate conversation.
Right, and also to generate excitement or curiosity among those around the table.
Yeah,
why are we doing these things?
The stories in the Talmud, it was different back in Talmudic days, where the parents would ask the kids the questions, and the kids would be, blah, 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 I don't know. So they eventually had the kids ask the questions. But they would do things like, they had little individual tables, like TV tables, and the father of the house would come and take the tray away before they were done. He said, why did you do that? You've asked the question. We don't have to ask the 4 questions anymore. So,
anything to get to the meal, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be page 34. Here's a song at the very top. Avadim Hayinu. We were slaves to Pharaoh and Mitzrayim. And this is a nice tune that all of us are familiar with.
Right.
Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu, Ata b'nei Chorin, b'nei Chorin. Avadim Hayinu, Ata b'nei Chorin, b'nei Chorin. Avadim Hayinu, Ata b'nei Chorin, b'nei Chorin. We were slaves and you are free people.
Wait, now we're free. Okay. We were slaves to Pharaoh and Mitzrayim, but God took us forth with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. And if the Holy One, praised be He, had not taken our ancestors out of Mitzrayim, we and our children and our children's children would still be enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Now, even if all of us were scholars, and even if all of us were sages, even if all of us were elders, and even if all of us were learned in the Torah, it would still be our duty to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. Moreover, whoever elaborates upon the story of the Exodus deserves praise. A tale is told. A tale is told about Rabbi Eliezer. Where do we have this? Yeah. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon. They were all gathered in Bnei Brak, discussing the Exodus from Mitzrayim all through the night, till their students came to them and said, "Masters, the time has come to recite the morning Shema." Now, there have been a lot of questions about this little snippet of text. What were these rabbis doing in Bnei Brak, which was the hometown of Rabbi Akiva only? Why didn't their students join them in celebrating the Seder? Why didn't the rabbis themselves notice the rising of the sun? Context is everything here. The story takes place during the rule of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who ordered that the temple be moved so he could put a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. In the year 123 of the Common Era, a guerrilla insurgency began, which resulted in a crackdown by the Roman authorities. Bnei Brak was the headquarters of the rebellion against Roman occupation, a rebellion of which Rabbi Akiva was a leader. Because of rebel activities, the Roman authorities had forbidden gatherings of Jews on pain of death. The Seder described in this passage was used not only as a chance to discuss the liberation from Egypt, but also to plan a strategy of resistance against Roman occupation. The students were standing guard, ready to caution the rabbis to disband at daybreak lest they get caught. Now, so you could read this tale as an encouragement to become so joyfully immersed in the Seder you don't notice the passing of the time. And it could also be read as a story of how one liberation begets another liberation. Celebrating our freedom from servitude can be a radical act. It was Rabbi Akiva, after all, who famously answered the query, which is better, study or action? With the answer, study, if it leads to action. There's this other thing here. This is good for me, because this is the year. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, "Behold, I am as old as the years of man. I am like 70 years old, yet I was not convinced that the Exodus should be referred to every night, until Ben Zoma explained it to me through this verse, in order that you may remember the day of your departure from Mitzrayim all the days of your life. The days of your life indicates only during the day. All the days of your life includes the nights as well. So the sages explain the days of your life means, another way to explain it, the days of your life means this world, and all the days of your life means the days of the Messiah and the world to come." And then we have some very nice construction paper art.
On page 38, there's a song at the very top, the first 4 lines, and I like to sing this song. It's called Baruch HaMakom.
I love it when you sing this song.
It goes like this. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Natan Torah, Shenatan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Shenatan Torah Li'amo Yisrael, Baruch Hu.
Praised is he or she who is everywhere. Praised is he who gave the Torah to his people Israel. Praised is he. Now we come across the story of the 4 children. Traditionally the 4 sons, but we expand that. The Torah alludes to 4 types of children: one who is wise, one who is wicked, one who is simple, and one who does not know how to ask. So what do they say? And here's that song you wanted.
Yeah, we can sing a song to this. Some of you might have this and be familiar with it. Do you want to sing the song, or do you want to read the Haggadah?
Well, we'll read the Haggadah and then we'll do the song.
Okay.
Okay. We're not in a hurry. What does the wise child ask? What are the statutes, the laws, and the ordinances which our God has commanded us? You should inform this child of all the laws of Passover, including the ruling that nothing should be eaten after the Afikomen.
And now, what does the wicked child ask? And when you're conducting a Seder, it's always fun to assign the wicked child to somebody at the table.
Like
right?
one of your own kids.
Right. In my house would be my brother David, but now it's going to be me.
You're moving up in the world.
Yeah. What does the wicked child ask? What does this ritual mean to you? To you and not to him. Since he removes himself from the community by denying God's role in the Exodus, shake him by replying, "This is done because of what Adonai did for me when I went out of Mitzrayim. For me, not for him. Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed."
You get it. What does the simple child ask? What is this all about? Well, you should tell him. It was with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm that God took us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage.
As for the child who does not know even how to ask, you should open the discussion for him, as it is written, "And you shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what Adonai did for me when I went free out of Mitzrayim."
Yeah.
So
here's the song.
there's a little song that we like to sing, sung to the tune of Clementine. It's called the Ballad of the 4 Sons. And here it's actually attributed to a gentleman named Ben Aronin. Or Aronin. Let's go ahead and I'll sing this, and hopefully you can follow along and enjoy it. Said the father to his children, "At the Seder you will dine. You will eat your fill of matzah. You will drink 4 cups of wine."
Yeah.
Now this father had no daughters, but his sons, they numbered 4. One was wise and one was wicked. One was simple and a bore. And the 4th was sweet and winsome. He was young and he was small. While his brothers asked the questions, he could scarcely speak at all. Said the wise one to his father, "Would you please explain the laws of the customs of the Seder? Will you please explain the cause?" And the father proudly answered, "As your fathers ate in speed, ate the Paschal lamb ere midnight, and from slavery were freed, so we follow their example, and ere midnight must complete all the Seder, and we should not after 12 remain to eat." Then did sneer the son so wicked, "What does all this mean to you?" And the father's voice grew bitter as his grief and anger grew. "If yourself you don't consider as a son of Israel, then for you this has no meaning. You could be a slave as well." Then the simple son said softly, "What is this?" And quietly the good father told his offspring, "We were freed from slavery." But the youngest son was silent, for he could not speak at all. His bright eyes were bright with wonder as his father told him all. Now, dear people, heed the lesson and remember evermore what the father told his children, told his sons, who numbered 4. There it is. And one thing that I note about the wise son, it says you should explain to him how everything should be eaten after the Afikomen.
Nothing should be.
Right, but I think the reason that they kind of mention the Afikomen is, isn't it the case in the Talmud that that's like the last thing that's discussed?
Yeah.
It's like basically saying, explain to him A to Z. You can be very thorough with him.
Right.
And by the way, the wicked son has nothing to his intellect. It's all about his attitude.
That's right. He's smart.
Yeah.
He's just bad.
So,
Okay. In the beginning. Well, we're not doing Genesis, we're doing Exodus. מתחילה עבדי עבודה זרה היו אבותינו. In the beginning, our ancestors served idols, but then God embraced us so that we might serve God. As it is written, and Joshua said to the people, "Thus says God of Israel. Long ago, long ago, your ancestors dwelt beyond the river Euphrates. Terach, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, they served other gods. But I took your father Abraham from beyond the river, and I led him through all the land of Canaan. I multiplied his descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau, and to Esau I gave Mount Seir as in his inheritance. But Jacob and his children went down to Mitzrayim." Go ahead, pick it up.
praised be he who keeps his promise to Israel. Praised be he who foresaw both our enslavement and our redemption when he made the covenant with our father Abraham. As it is written, he said unto Abram, "Know for certain that your offspring shall be strangers in a strange land, and shall be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years. But know with equal certainty that I will judge the nation that enslaved them, and that afterwards they will leave with great substance."
Now, we symbolically raise our cups. It is this promise that has sustained our ancestors and us. For not just one enemy has arisen to destroy us, rather in every generation there are those who seek our destruction. But the Holy One, praised be he, saves us from their hands.
And now we'll sing at the bottom of page 42.
Right.
Vehisha Amda. And I like to use this tune. There are two melodies that you're probably familiar with. I like to use this one. Vehisha Amda lavotenu vehelanu. Vehisha Amda lavotenu vehelanu. Vehisha Amda lavotenu vehelanu. Vehisha Amda lavotenu vehelanu. Shelo echad bilvad. Amad aleinu lechalotenu. Ele shabachador vador, omdim aleinu lechalotenu. V'hakadosh baruch hu, v'hakadosh baruch hu, matzilenu miyadam. V'hakadosh baruch hu, v'hakadosh baruch hu, matzilenu miyadam. By the way, the other melody, just to sing the first line, would be Vehisha Amda, lavotenu velanu. Vehisha Amda, lavotenu velanu. So, two seders, two melodies. I'm sure there are more than that.
Now we're getting into the heart of Judaism. Judaism is not so much a biblical religion as it is a religion of the rabbis who interpreted the original texts. And what they did with it is they came up with a system of what's called midrash. Midrash explains the gaps and the lack of clarifications that are in the Torah. And so out of one verse, there would be pages written that explain it and give you background and context and help you understand it better. We're not going to do the entire thing. We're just going to do one section here. But I want you to pay attention to how it's done, and then we'll get on with other things. Consider these verses. My father was a wandering Aramean, and with just a few people he went down to Mitzrayim and sojourned there. And there he became a great nation, mighty and numerous. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us, and they imposed hard labor upon us. We cried out to the God of our ancestors, and he heard our plea and saw our afflictions, our misery, and our oppression. Then he took us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with awesome power, with signs, and with wonders. So they take each of those verses, I think there's 4 verses, and they take them apart and fill in gaps. My father was a wandering Aramean, and with just a few people he went down to Mitzrayim and sojourned there, and there he became a great nation, mighty and numerous. My father was a wandering Aramean, and he went down to Egypt. He was impelled by force of the divine word, as it is written, "Know for a certainty that your offspring shall be strangers in a strange land, and they shall be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years," with just a few people.
With just a few people, as is written, your ancestors went down to Mitzrayim with 70 persons in all, And now Adonai your God has made you as numerous as the stars in the sky.
And sojourned there. This teaches that our father Jacob did not go down to settle permanently in Egypt, but rather to dwell there, to sojourn there, as it is written. And Jacob's son said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in this land, since there's no pasture for your servant's flock, for the famine in the land of Canaan is severe. Pray let your servant stay a while in the land of Goshen."
And there he became a great nation. This teaches that the Israelites became easily identifiable there. They became unique, recognized as a distinctive nation through their observance of mitzvot. They were never suspected of unchastity or of slander. They did not change their names, and they did not change their language.
Mighty and numerous, as it is written, the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and increased greatly, so that the land was filled with them.
The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us, and they imposed hard labor upon us. Well, the Egyptians dealt harshly with us. They were ungrateful, for they paid back in evil the kindness that Joseph had done for them. As it is written, a new king arose over Mitzrayim who did not know Joseph. He acted as if he did not know about Joseph.
But he knew. Another interpretation, the Egyptians dealt harshly with us. They made us appear to be bad. For it is written that Pharaoh said to his people, "Behold, the Israelites are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal cunningly with them, lest they multiply. For then, in the event of war, they might join our enemies and fight against us, and later leave our land." It's forward thinking, to get people on your side, to enslave them.
Yeah.
And oppressed us, as it is written, so that they set taskmasters over the Israelites to oppress them with forced labor, and they built store cities for Pharaoh, Pitom and Ramses. And the Egyptians ruthlessly compelled the Israelites to toil with rigor.
And they imposed hard labor upon us. They would impose a difficult task upon the weak and an easy task upon the strong, a light burden upon the young and a heavy burden upon the old. This was work without end and futile, for the Egyptians wanted not only to enslave them, but also to break their spirit.
I think we're going to skip a couple of verses here. And we're going to go over to, "Then God took us out of Mitzrayim with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm," the last of the verses, "with signs and with wonders." And we're going to pick this up on page 54 of the Feast of Freedom Haggadah, which we're going to go to now. "Then Adonai took us out of Mitzrayim, not by an angel, not by a seraph, not by a messenger, rather the Holy One himself in his glory, as it is written, 'For that night I will pass through Egypt, and I will strike down every firstborn in Egypt, both man and beast. And on all the gods of Mitzrayim I will execute just judgments. I am the Lord.'"
With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, when the Egyptians made the life of our ancestors bitter, the Holy One said, "I will redeem them." As it is written, "I will free you from the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary judgments. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I, Adonai, am your God."
With awesome power. This refers to divine revelation, as it is written, "Has God ever taken for himself one nation from the midst of another, with prodigious acts and signs and wonders, with war and a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and with awesome power, as the Lord your God did for you in Mitzrayim before your eyes?"
With signs, this refers to the staff, as it is written, "And in your hand take this staff, which you shall perform the signs."
Another interpretation about the signs. This refers to God's commandments, for they are an eternal sign that God saves and redeems, and a remembrance for all generations of the covenant between the Holy One and his people. Thus it is written, "And this shall serve you as a sign on your hand and a symbol on your forehead, in order that the teachings of the Lord may be in your mouth, that with a mighty hand the Lord freed you from Egypt." And with wonders.
This refers to the plagues, as it is written, "And I will show you wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke."
And now we get to one of the high points of the Seder, and that is the 10 plagues. And this year is the one where we think about plagues a lot.
Indeed. Well, on the bottom of page 58 and 59, you can see the plagues are listed there in Hebrew and in English. And what we do is we dip our finger. I use my finger.
Okay, well, you can use your finger, but I need a little bit more.
Oh, I'll take a cup.
We're experiencing a liturgical difficulty that's beyond our control. Thank you.
I know some might dip a utensil, but the bottom line, what we're talking about is taking some of the wine out of your cup and putting it on the plate.
Diminishing the full cup. A full cup is a sign of total joy, but we can't be totally happy because a lot of people died for us to get out.
And suffered for us. And so we recognize the humanity of all people by removing from our wine, which symbolizes joy, a little bit for each of the plagues. And so what I'll do is I'm going to recite the plague, and we dip our finger, we go one by one. So I'll do it in Hebrew, and then should we recite it in English?
I'll just chime in.
Okay. Dam,
Blood,
Tzfardea,
frogs,
Kinim,
vermin,
Aro,
beasts,
Dever,
cattle plague,
Shchin,
boils,
Barad,
hail,
Arber,
locusts,
Choshech,
darkness,
Makat Bechorot.
death of the firstborn.
And then it says, Rabbi Yehuda, Hayanotain Bahem Siman. Rabbi Judah made them into an acrostic. And so he must have been a powerful guy because we still have Rabbi Judah's acrostic in our Haggadah, right?
I know, but it doesn't help me remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you a little side story. My father used to say, how do you remember the first 5 books of the Torah, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. How do you remember that?
There must be a way.
You do. General Electric lights never dim. That's an acrostic. Okay, boys and girls, General Electric lights never dim. Now we're going to do this Rabbi Yehuda's way. Ditzach Adash Be'achav. All right. And like they said in the Great 10 Commandments, and so it is what? So let it be written, so let it be done.
So let it be written, let it be done. Yul Brenner?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, a popular song at the Seder is Dayenu. And we're moving on to page 60 and 61. Dayenu is the kind of song that goes on for quite a while. We're not going to do the whole thing, are we?
No. We do a couple.
But if you want to, just pause the button and sing the song around the table if you got your family there, or even if you're by yourself.
So the way we like to do it is we start singing Dayenu, and then there's all these verses, had he done this and not done that, it would have been enough, and we progress through this thinking.
Now, in the Dayenu, there's a line that says, had he divided the sea for us without leading us across dry land, Dayenu, had he led us across the dry land without taking care of us for 40 years in the desert, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Dayenu means it would have been enough for us. And so what my family does is at this point, because they're mentioning the sea, we serve some gefilte fish around that time.
Oh.
And we happen to have some here.
I love that tradition. So what we're going to do is after we sing, we're going to sing 3 verses of Dayenu. We're going to sing the second line, Hotzianu mimitzrayim, and then about halfway through there's a line, Natan lanu et ha-Shabbat, about giving us the Sabbath, and then a line about Natan lanu et ha-Torah, giving us the Torah. Those are the lines we're going to sing, and of course we all know the refrain, Dayenu.
Right.
And Dayenu means it would have been enough, and there are like probably enough jokes about that, right?
Well, it's funny because, little Israeli kids, you see them at the airports when you can go to the airports again, and they'll be talking to their parents. They'll say "die," and Americans think they're being rude, but they're just saying enough already.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Ilu hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natan lanu et ha-Shabbat natan lanu, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu natan natan lanu et haTorah natan lanu Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. And every year at our Seder, I remind my children how I was once watching with them some Disney show on the Disney Channel, and all of a sudden the three main characters broke into some kind of song. They were singing this English song, I can't remember what, but the melody, unmistakably, was Dayenu. If we did and da da da, and I'm like,
They had a Jewish writer.
yeah, a Jewish writer. I couldn't believe it. Yeah,
Imagine that, a Jewish screenwriter.
or songwriter.
So because of the fish, we're going to have a bite of fish now.
So you can watch a seat, you can pause the video, but
We're just going to have a bite. We're not going to eat the whole thing.
bon appetit. Okay.
So, Baruch atah she'akol niyeh bidvaro.
Baruch atah she'akol b'dvaro.
And as long as we're stopped, we should probably explain the Seder plate. This is a number of symbols that are placed on the plate. We already seen the parsley and the salt water. A lot of them are signs of spring. But the lettuce serves the same purpose as the horseradish. You're supposed to eat a bitter herb, and there comes a point where we will make a little sandwich between charoset, which is sweet, and the maror, which is bitter, and the matzah. They call that a Hillel sandwich?
Yeah.
And, but horseradish isn't really bitter, it's hot. But it doesn't stimulate the bitter taste buds that you have. Lettuce, although it's not as intense, does do that. Romaine lettuce is technically bitter, so a lot of people have gone back to that. Originally, that's what it was. And then in Europe, when they couldn't get lettuce, they turned to horseradish.
Also, there's nothing wrong with putting lettuce on your Hillel sandwich. I mean,
Yeah, wouldn't hurt. Couldn't hurt. And then we didn't have an actual shank bone of a lamb, so we have a representation of one. I have actually a sweet potato to use instead of the Paschal lamb. We call it the Paschal yam.
yeah.
All right.
Then you have the charoset.
And the charoset is symbolizing technically the mortar that went in between the bricks that the Israelites made when they were slaves, so that you spread it between the bricks and it keeps it there. But we eat it.
Because it's delicious.
It's really great, yeah.
And we know people that make very, very many variations of charoset.
Oh, yeah.
It's like almost like having a charoset bar, like you might have a salsa bar.
Right. Different kinds of apples and peppers and all kinds of things.
I guess it's nice to have charoset because it really is delicious, you know, when you have to eat the bitter herbs, you know. Yeah, something special.
It's a balancing act. You got to have your yin with your yang.
And then we have this number. Why don't you talk about this?
Oh, the roasted egg, also a symbol of springtime. Eggs are the symbol of a new beginning.
But I remember that the reason we roast it is because this also represents a spring sacrifice, right?
Right.
And so we no longer have the temple's destroyed, and so to sort of symbolize that, this is actually literally burnt or roasted, and that's the significance of that.
Now we're getting up to the heart of things. Okay, so we walked through the sea, Miriam danced, and all the women came out. And at this point in the Seder, we recall Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel would say, those who have not explained these three things during the Seder have not fulfilled their obligation. These three things are the Pesach offering, the matzah, and the maror. So we remember the Pesach offering in the temple times as we recite Pesach. Why did our ancestors eat the Pesach offering at their Seder? As a reminder that the Holy One, praised be He, passed over the Israelite dwellings in Egypt, as it is written, You shall say it is the Pesach, the Passover offering to the Lord, because he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians and spared our homes.
And matzah. Why do we eat it? To remind ourselves that even before the dough of our ancestors had time to rise, the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, praised be he, revealed himself and redeemed them, as it is written, and they baked the dough which they had brought from Mitzrayim into unleavened cakes, matzot. It did not rise, since they were hurried out of Mitzrayim, and they could not delay, nor had they prepared other provisions for themselves.
Maror, why do we eat it? To remind ourselves that, as it is written, the Egyptians in Egypt embittered the lives of our ancestors with hard labor in mortar and in brick, and in every manner of drudgery in the field, and worked them ruthlessly in all their labor.
In each generation, every individual should feel as though he or she had actually been redeemed from Mitzrayim. As it is said, you shall tell your children on that day, saying, it is because of what Adonai did for me when I went free out of Mitzrayim. For the Holy One redeemed not only our ancestors, he redeemed us with them. As it is said, he brought us out of there so that he might bring us to the land he promised our ancestors. Let me say one thing about the matzah. I remember being at a Seder and someone remarking, you know, when the Jews were hurried out of Egypt, they didn't have enough time to let their bread rise, and that's why we have unleavened bread. But someone once commented, how long would it actually take to grab a little bit of yeast, if that's what they use as a thickening agent,
or baking soda,
and just drop it on the matzah? We got to go, boom. That's less than a second. So it's not so much the time, it's the fact that they didn't want to dilly-dally, even for that one brief moment,
right,
delay in getting out of Egypt. And that's another thing to consider.
You can lose a race by 1 second.
Absolutely. You can tell that to a lot of Olympians. Less than that.
Yep.
Yes.
Now, we don't have on the Seder plate some of the newer options to put on there. Like, there's a lot of people who put an orange on their Seder plate to represent the overlooked women in our society. A folk tradition claims that someone once criticized Jewish feminism by shouting, women belong on the pulpit, the bima, like oranges belong on a Seder plate. So many people today put an orange on their Seder plate as a symbol that women belong wherever the Jews carry on a sacred life. Women do belong in Judaism, whether on the bima or at the Seder table, but it's not actually how the story began. But I'm going to leave you with that apocryphal story, and if you really want to know the truth about it, give me a call. And let's see now. So it's trying to be inclusive there. Other people put a tomato on the plate to represent the farm workers. Some people, an olive put on a Seder plate. After the flood, Noah's dove brought an olive branch as a sign that the earth was habitable again. And today, ancient olive groves are destroyed by violence, making a powerful symbol of peace into a casualty of war.
Maybe this year someone will put a mask on the Seder plate to represent the healthcare workers who've had to go through extraordinary times, keeping us all, trying to keep us all as healthy as possible.
And we salute you for that. Okay. Now we get into, we're almost there, we're almost at the meal, but first, I was just reading about this. It seems as if that the original Seders, they didn't have all of this stuff. There hadn't been rabbis yet to put it all together or make the commentary. People think that the Last Supper was a Seder, but it couldn't have been a Seder the way we know a Seder because there wasn't one yet. So, but what they did have was the matzah, the moror, and the charoset, and they had they sang Hallel, the section of Psalms between I think Psalm 113 and 118, and we're going to just do a snippet of that right now. So wait a second, lift the cup of wine and recite.
Well, on the top of page 69, there's a little prayer. We can lift a cup of wine and we can recite this in English together if you like, on the top of 69. Therefore, we must reveal, exalt, extol, acclaim, adore, and glorify God, who performed all these miracles for our ancestors and for us. He took us from slavery to freedom,
from despair to joy,
from mourning to celebration,
from darkness to light.
from enslavement to redemption.
And we sing before him a new song.
Hallelujah. V'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha, v'nomar lefanav shira chadasha. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
And we'll do a little bit of Hallel here on page 70 at the top.
B'tzeit Yisrael mi Mitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshilotav, Hayam rav, Hayanos, Hayardin, Yisov le'achor, He'arim rakiduchelim, Kivad givnei tzon, Malecha hayam, Kitanu, Hayardin, Tisov le'achor,
He'arim,
Tirkeducha elim,
Givad,
Kivnei tzon, Milifnei Adon, Huli Yaretz, Milifnei Elohai Yaakov, Hahofchi Hatzor, Hagamai, Chalami, Leman Yomayim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who has redeemed us and our ancestors from Mitzrayim, who has brought us to this night when we eat matzah and maror. Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, enable us to celebrate in peace other holy days and festivals, joyful in the rebuilding of your city, Jerusalem, and joyful in your service. We will sing a new song of thanks for our redemption and for our spiritual liberation. Praise to you, Adonai, Redeemer of the people Israel. Baruch atah, Ka'al Yisrael.
Great period.
Here we go. Second cup on the bottom of page 70. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Now here's kind of when you round the turn in the race and you can see sort of like a finish line of the meal kind of in the distance, you know what I'm saying? And those markers, you know, if I pass marker 1, marker 2, marker 3, I'll be there. We're getting there.
We're very close to where we pause so you can eat.
We're flying now. Let me go get the, oh, here we go.
Here we go.
I'm going to put a little more water into our wash basin because that's what's coming up next. Those of you who wanted to hear what the water sounds like, actually it's pretty silent. Okay, I'm gonna move the matzah out of the way.
Although it's next.
Move the water over here, but we're gonna rock. We're gonna rock tzah now. Okay, want to introduce this? Over here.
There we go. Before eating, we wash our hands, thanking God for the commandment which impels us to mindfulness. What does washing our hands tell us? That we can become clean, that our bodies are sacred and deserving of care. Why wash hands and not feet, as our Middle Eastern ancestors did? Not just because it's impractical for Seder guests to doff their shoes, but because hands are the instrument with which we work in the world. It's our hands which plant and write, which caress and create, and also our hands which strike and poison and smash. We wash our hands not to absolve ourselves of responsibility, but to affirm the need to make our hands holy. At this season of freedom and rebirth, we consecrate our hands to the task of building freedom for all who suffer. So we put the water on our hands and then we say the blessing. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Now we bring the matzah back.
Center stage. We already covered why we have matzah tonight, so we're going to go directly to the two blessings that are for the matzah.
Doesn't matter which one we break.
No.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah.
Amen.
The wheat was a good vintage this year. It's that New York water, right?
I think it's from Israel.
I know.
But New York water is very good. It's like filtered 100 times or something. I used to sell bottled New York water.
I know that when they talk about pizza, they say the pizza in New York is special because it's the water, you know. I don't know if it's the same thing for the schmoromats over there, but...
It depends on what part of New York.
Yeah.
So at this point, we just have a couple more ritual things before the meal. The maror, the bitter herb. Why do we eat maror? Maror represents the bitterness of bondage. Why do we eat charoset? It symbolizes the mortar for the bricks our ancestors laid in Egypt. Though it represents slave labor, charoset is sweet, reminding us that sometimes constriction or enslavement can be masked in familiar sweetness. Eating the two together, we remind ourselves to be mindful of life with all its sweetness and bitterness, and to seek the balance between the two. So, a little spoon of charoset and maror.
I wonder if they ever thought about writing a song, just a spoonful of charoset makes the maror go down.
You know, it's funny that you should mention that. Actually, I have that here.
Let's say, do we say the blessing?
Oh, yeah.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror.
Okay.
My father used to ground his own maror. He used to get the horseradish root,
Oh,
put it in the blender, just ground it up. And yeah, you could tell, you know, but he loved the atomic stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, really. The white horseradish is really strong.
Right, right.
This is nothing. Okay, sorry I jumped the gun on that. Okay, now while the temple still stood, the sage Hillel originated the tradition of eating matzah and maror together, combining the bread of liberation with the remembrance of the bitterness of slavery. And following his example, we create a physical representation of the holiday's central dialectical tension. And so we put a piece of matzah, put between two little pieces of matzah, a little maror. You could do the lettuce because that's maror. Top it off with some horseradish because that's what a lot of people think is maror. Why should we disenfranchise those people?
A little bit of charoset, right?
You can add some charoset, sure.
Do you, or you don't like to do that?
Uh,
I don't know. It's okay. We don't have to. See what it tastes. Ah, all right.
Okay. Since we've already said blessing,
זכר למקדש כהלל,
Yeah.
כן עשה הלל בזמן שבית המקדש היה קיים, היה כורך מצה מרור ואוכל ביחד, לקיים מה שנאמר על מצות מרורים יאכלוהו. This is a reminder of the temple and a reminder of the practice of Hillel. While the temple was in existence, Hillel would make a sandwich of the Pesach offering with matzah and maror. So he literally would take the meat, put some horseradish on it, and some matzah. Sounds pretty good. And eat all three together in fulfillment of the verse, with matzot and maror they shall eat it. Here we go. Whoop. Okay.
now we're going to pause for a moment. And you can have your meal.
Time to eat. So enjoy B'tei Avon, and we'll see you at the when you're done with your the meal.
Fade to black.
Okay.
Welcome back.
We hope you enjoyed your meal.
We certainly enjoyed ours here.
We enjoyed the idea of you enjoying your meal, that's for sure.
Well, certainly, yeah. Your pleasure is our pleasure. There's a few more steps to the Seder, and we're going to go through them. There's Tzafon, Barech, and
Hallel Nirtzah.
Hallel and Yirtzah. There's 4 more sections.
4 more steps. So those of you doing like the over and under thing, we're almost done.
Yeah, you want to do your accounting that way.
Yeah.
The next step after the meal, before we say the grace after meals, is called Tzafun. And this is where we find the Afikomen. The Afikomen's gone.
Well, what do you know?
I'll be darned.
Well,
There's a number of customs about this. Usually, an adult hides it, so the thing that I grew up with is that an adult somehow hides the Afikomen, and one of the kids goes searching for it, and that kid who finds it gets a reward, sort of holds the matzah at ransom, so that he gets a reward when he turns it in, turns state's evidence on matzah.
exactly.
Another thing that people do is, like, one of the children will, in fact, steal it, and the adults have to figure it out where it went. Fortunately, we happen to know where it went, because it was well hidden under my Haggadah. And so now, it's an interesting thing about the Afikomen. When the temple still stood in Jerusalem, it was customary to make an offering of a paschal lamb at this season, as you know, the Passover sacrifice. Now we eat the Afikomen in memory of that offering. Tzafun means hidden, and the Afikomen is usually hidden for children to find. Why end the meal like this? Because we want the dinner to end with the taste of slavery versus freedom in our mouths, and the taste of matzah rather than some unrelated sweet thing. But this explains eating matzah late, not the charade of hiding it. The hiding works on 2 levels. One, it intrigues the kids, and it allows us to affirm our sense of the hidden and the mysterious. And on this theory, we hide the larger half of the broken matzah because we're affirming that there's more that is hidden and mysterious in the world than any information we can gather. You know, that is so deep. And it is so true. You know, no matter how much we find, there's always a lot more that we don't know. Who was it that said the beginning of wisdom is understanding that you don't know anything?
I don't know.
You're a wise man. So, we unwrap the Afikomen from its
Fancy Afikomen cover.
We break it into the number of people that we have. Sometimes it's a sizable piece. Sometimes it's just a little, tiny little bit, because it has to go around. When we have the community Seder, this half a matzah has to go out. And
It's one of those desserts where people really aren't clamoring for seconds, if you know what I mean.
yeah, they're not lining up for it. We have strawberries.
No one boasts about, I bought the afikoman for as a guest or anything like that. B'tei
Potato. Now, we know you can hear us crunching,
No.
and we're sorry for that. But there you go. Now we get to barech, the blessings after the meal.
And before that, if you need to put any wine into your cup,
Yeah.
make sure you have wine for the third cup of wine. I think you're good, right?
I could use a little.
A little bit? No problem. All right.
All right. Grazie.
Okay. So now when we recite Birkat HaMazon, because we actually have eaten bread, we can use God's name because it's actually in certain sections, right? The first section we
Yeah,
won't, but the second sections we will.
Okay.
How's that? Make it a little easier. So where do we start on this? On page 78, we have it in our Haggadah, but I believe there's a
first
short
part.
version.
There is.
That's on page 88.
88.
So we're going to start on page 88.
Oh, we're going to start on 78 with Shiramalu.
We'll start on 78 with Shir Hamalot, and then we're actually going to jump to page 90, okay? Because what's recited on page 78 is really when you have,
3 or more.
3 or more. So you might have that.
So if you do, you can insert the zimun,
Right.
the invitation for everyone to join you, and that's found on page 88.
We're going to start on page 78.
We're-
Shir Hamalot b'shuv
Shuvadon,
et shivat Zion ayinu kechol mimaz yamale schok pinu shonenu rina az yomru v'hagoyim higdil
Adonai
Lasoti mele higdilat, lasoti manu hayinu semechim shuva. Et shivatenu gafikim b'negev hazorim bedima berina yikzoru. Haloch yelechu v'acho nosem eshech hazara yavo verina nosei olumotav. Now we go to page 90.
Right.
Now here I will recite God's name. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hazan et haolam kulo b'tuvo b'chein b'chesed u'vrachamim hu notei lechem l'chol basar ki le'olam chaso u'v'tuvo hagado Tami lo chasar lanu ve'alechsar lanu mazon le'olam va'ed ba'avor shemo hagado Yel zanum farnes lahakol U'metiv lahakol U'mechir mazon le'chol briotav asher bara Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol No delecha Adonai Eloheinu al shinchat lavoteinu Eretz chemdata va'orchava barit v'torah Chaim u'mazon Yitbarach shimcha b'fi chochai Tami le'olam va'ed Kakatu v'yalchalta v'savata u've'rachta Et Adonai Elohecha Al ha'aretz ha'tova asher natan lach Baruch atah Adonai Al haaretz v'al hamazon.
Elohim.
Hinu v'lohei avoteinu, ya'aleh v'yavo yagia v'yira'eh v'yizacher v'yipakid zichronenu v'zichron avoteinu v'yizrechon Yerushalayim yirecha v'yizrir n'chol amcha kol beit Yisrael afanecha l'tova b'yom chag hamatzot hazeh Zachrinu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova ufagteinu vo livracha V'oshe'enu vo l'chaim Rachim Adonai Eloheinu al Yisrael Amecha v'Malchut Beit David Mishichecha u'v'nei Yerushalayim Mir HaKodesh v'Mir Aviyameinu Baruch Atah Adonai Odeh v'Rachamav Yerushalayim Amen. Page 92. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam HaMelech HaTov HaMeitiv Lako Hu Heitiv U'Meitiv U'Yeitiv Lanu Hugam Alanu Hugam Leinu Yigmal Leinu La'ad Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim V'Zakinu Limod HaMashiach Harachamanu Yivarech Et Kol HaMesubihim Kan Harachamanu Yanchelenu Yom Sheku Lo Tov Mishach Lanu Yel Shava Umisha Shatinu Yel Lirfua Umasha Hotarnu Yel Livracha Kidichtiv Yitain Lifnehem V'Yochlu V'Yotiru Kidvar Adonai Adonai Oz Li'amo Yitain Adonai Yevarech Et Amo V'Shalom.
Now it's time for the third cup of wine.
Third cup of wine. Time to wet your whistle. One more time.
Well, we got one more after this.
Yeah, but this is one more time to wet the whistle.
One more time. Once again.
Once again, maybe better use of words. Baruch Atah Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei Peri Hagafen. Okay.
Well, the Haggadah that we're using here goes into some Holocaust references and some of the tough times that we've been through since the Egyptian oppression. There's a part here where you open the door for Elijah, and have we filled Elijah's cup yet?
Yeah, we have one. Yeah. This is Elijah's cup. This has wine in it. And this cup has water in it. We call this Kos Miriam, Miriam's cup.
Right. So we're going to invite you to go open the door to your house.
And we all rise when we say this, right?
Yeah, we stand up for this. But there's something that gets said here that may be upsetting to some people, or people might find it a little rough. And that is, Shvok hamatcha el hagoyim asher lo yeda'ucha. Pour out your wrath upon those who do not know you, and upon the governments who do not call upon your name, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his dwelling place. Pour out your fury on them. Let the fierceness of your anger overtake them. Pursue them in indignation and destroy them from under your heavens. This quotes from Psalms and Lamentations. However, relations between cultures have, I think, particularly in America, have gotten much better since the time this was written. And so in the Worms Haggadah of 1521, it was written, a different version of this. It says, Shvoch avatacha al hagoyim asher yeducha v'al mamlachot asher b'shimcha korim b'glal chasidim shehem osim im Yaakov u'meginim al amcha b'Yisrael mivnei ochleihem. Yizku lirot b'sukkot b'hirecha v'lishmoach b'simchat goyecha. I hope we can edit that out. Pour out your love on the nations who have known you, and on the kingdoms who call upon your name. For they show loving kindness to the seed of Jacob, and they defend your people Israel from those who would devour them alive. May they live to see the sukkah of peace spread over your chosen ones, and to participate in the joy of your nations. And this is, I think, the source of the righteous Gentile movement that was started by Harold Schulweis a few decades ago. And the Haftorah on Shabbat for Shabbat HaGadol, right before Passover, says, it closes with, from the book of Malachi, Behold, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord, I will send the prophet Elijah to you. He will turn the hearts of the parents to the children and the hearts of the children to their parents, which you got to admit is really a miracle.
It reminds me of one of my favorite jokes. Why do grandchildren and grandparents get along so well?
They have a common enemy.
Indeed.
So we're going to welcome Elijah into the house, and all you got to do is go open the door.
Take time, open the door. This is not the time to bring in your Amazon packages, by the way.
But they might be there.
Shall we sing Eliyahu Hanavi?
Yes.
Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera v'yamenu, Yava aleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Okay.
All right, you can go close the door now, before the neighbors said anything. And we continue with a couple more tunes from Hallel, the bottom of page 106.
Adonai Zacharanu Yevarech, Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon, Yevarech Yirei Adonai, Haketanim Ima Gidolim, Yosef Adonai Alechem, Alechem v'al b'neichem, V'ruchim atem Adonai, Oseh shamayim va'aretz, shamayim, shamayim l'Adonai, v'haaretz natan livnei Adam, lo hamitim yehallelujah, v'lo kol yordei dulma, v'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ata v'yad olam, me'ata v'yad olam, hallelujah.
And we'll continue on page 110.
Let's sing in the third line down, Hodu.
Okay.
Let's see. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasdo, Yomar na Yisrael, ki le'olam chasdo, Yomru na ve'daron, Ki le'olam chasdo, Yomru na Yirei Adonai, Ki le'olam chasdo. Then the first two lines of Min HaMeitzar can be sung like this. Min HaMeitzar karatia, Hanani v'merchavia, Hanani, Hanani, Hanani v'merchavia, Hanani, Hanani, Hanani v'merchavia. And then at the very bottom, the last four lines, we can sing like this. Kol rina v'yishua, Kol rina v'yishua be'olet tzadikim, Kol rina v'yishua, Kol rina v'yishua be'olet tzadikim, Yemin Adonai, Osachayil, Yemin Adonai, Osachayil. One more time. Yemin Adonai, Osachayil. I guess one more time. Yemin Adonai, Osachayil. See, after 3 cups of wine, you start to get very good at counting. That's what happens.
Yeah, and you think you're better singing than you actually are.
Exactly. So. That's why it's important to stick around for this part of the Seder. This is when you can really let it go, and no one's going to really know much of the difference.
No one can tell.
Right.
If they're doing it right.
Right. Okay, why don't we just finish off Hallel with a couple verses on page 112, right in the middle of the page, about, let's see, that would be the 8th line down says Adna. Ahana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ahana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
There you go, a little bit of taste of Hallel. And if you like that, then Hallel is recited several times during the year. So please join us for that. Okay.
Like tomorrow morning.
Exactly. All right. Where to?
Well, we're not going to do Nishmat.
Oh, we can go to 118 if you like.
Yeah.
So there are several songs at this part of the Seder where we just did Shulchan Orech is the food, the meal. Remember, Kadesh Orchas, Kapas Yachas, Magid Rachsa, Motzi Matzah, Morach Orech, Shulchan Orech, Tzafun, that was the Afikomen, Barech, that's Birkat Hamazon. Hallel, we just did. Now we're in the section called really Nirtzah. Right?
Nirtzah.
So this is, we're just singing songs, and so we always have to decide around the Seder table, depending on how late it is and how people feel, how much of the song you're going to sing. This is one of my favorites, Kilo Na'eh. I particularly like it because if you look at it, you'll see the verse here has this phrase. L'cha, 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 ki l'cha, 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 shem mamlacha, kilo na'eh, kilo ya'eh.
I hope you got that.
And that's right. And if you didn't, when you're eating a lot of matzah, it helps to get, helps bring it up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Helps clear the throat a little bit. L'cha, 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 l'cha. I like saying that, as fast as I can. It's a fun thing to do. I kind of look at it like the first, the DJs back in the ancient day. L'cha, 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 getting a little syncopation going. But this song goes like this. Why don't we sing the first two verses on page 118 and the last two verses on page 119?
All right.
And for those of you at home, of course, you can always pause this and sing as much as you like or join us. Kilo na'eh, kilo ya'eh, adir bimlucha, bachor kalacha, gedudav yomrulo, l'cha u'lecha, l'cha ki l'cha, l'cha aflacha, l'cha r'naya mamlacha, kilo na'eh, kilo ya'eh, dagu bimlucha, hador kalacha, vatikav yomrulo, l'cha u'lecha, l'cha ki l'cha, l'cha aflacha, l'cha r'naya mamlacha, kilo na'eh, kilo ya'eh. 119. Last two verses. Kadosh bimlucha rachom kalacha sheninav yomrulo l'cha 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 ki l'cha 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 ranaya mamlacha kilo na'eh kilo ya'eh takif bimlucha tol mechalacha tamimav yomrulo l'cha 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 ki l'cha 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 ranaya mamlacha kilo na'eh kilo ya'eh. Nice. Now we're on page 120, and this song is Adir Hu. Adir Hu. This kind of reminds me of one of those, sort of like a drinking song,
It is.
Probably appropriate because,
At the end of it, we're going to have another cup.
I can just picture people holding their becher, as I used to call it. That's like a goblet.
Stein.
Stein, yeah. And they would sing something like this. Let's go ahead and let's why don't we do the first page and the last two verses on page 121. So we're going to be on 120, and we'll do the last two verses also on 121. Okay.
Okay.
And just pick. I could sing with a little slur, but I won't. We'll have fun with it. Adir hu, yivnei beito bekarov, bimheira, b'yamenu bekarov. El b'nei vitcha bekarov, bachor hu, gadol hu, dagul hu, yivnei beito bekarov, bimheira, b'yamenu bekarov. El b'nei vitcha bekarov, hador hu, vatiku, zakai hu, yivnei beito bekarov, bimheira, b'yamenu bekarov. El b'nei vitcha bekarov. Last one, 121. Podehu tzadiku kadoshu yivne veto bekaro bimheira bimheira biyamenu bekaro el b'nei vetcha bekaro rachamu shadaihu takifu yivne veto bekaro bimheira biyamenu bekaro el b'nei vetcha bekaro. And in case you're wondering, that's the melody I just did for Hodul Adonai Gido. It works well, and so on Pesach, I like to use this melody for that part of Hallel.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, now we're on page 122, Echad Miyodea.
Who knows one?
Who knows what? And this is a lovely song or poem, really, and it takes you through 13 13 verses, and each of the verses identifies something important or historic.
Or numerologically significant.
Yeah, in Judaism.
Yeah.
And so around my Seder table, we would start singing the song. We'd sing number 1 together, which is God, and then we'd each kind of take a number 2, number 3, number 4, and as we went through this, whoever had number 2 would always recite number 2, number 3, number 3. Of course, it was never rhythmically perfect because,
Not everybody's got rhythm.
Yeah, exactly, or not everyone's paying attention. But, you usually get through it. And,
Well, at least not after the wine.
yeah, exactly. But we're having a good time.
But you think you are.
So, I don't know, how do you want to do this for the folks at home?
Well, why don't we, well, we could just go to the last verse because it's got all of them in it.
Why don't we do, that's a good idea. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do the first 3 verses just to get an idea of,
How it
it
builds.
works. And then we'll go to number 13,
Yeah,
okay?
this and Hadgadia are like the house that Jack built. Jack, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But we love you, Jack. Okay. This is the way I sing it. Echad miyodea, echad ani yodea, echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz, shnayim miyodea, shnayim ani yodea. It's you.
Shnei luchot habrit.
Echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz, shlosha miyodea, shlosha ani yodea. It's me, shlosha avot.
Shnei luchot habrit.
Echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz. For equal opportunity here, let's do number 4. Arba miyodea, arba ani yodea,
Arba imahot.
shlosha avot.
Shnei luchot habrit.
Echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz. Now let's go to page 126, okay? This is number 13.
Okay, hold on here. I just wanted to say, when we're done with it, we're going to tell you what the numbers are significant for.
Right. We won't just tease you like that. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to do 13, you do 12, we'll just go all the way down.
Okay, fine.
Shlosha asar miyodea, shlosha asar ani yodea, shlosha asar midaya,
Shnei masar shivitaya.
chad asar kochlaya,
Asara divraya.
tisha yarchei leda,
Shmona yemei milah.
shivat yemei shabta,
Shisha sidrei mishnah.
chamisha chumshei Torah,
Arba imahot.
shlosha avot.
Shnei luchot habrit.
Echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz. That worked out perfectly. You got number 4, 3, 2, 1, just like we started.
Yep.
All right, what do these things mean, Rabbi? Tell us.
One is, of course, God in heaven and the earth. It's just one, though. 2 are the tablets of the covenant Moses came down with. 3 are the patriarchs, 4 are the matriarchs. 5 are the books of the Torah. 6 are the sections of the Mishnah. 7 are the days of the week. 8 are the days to a Brit Milah, circumcision. 9 are the months to childbirth. 10 are the commandments at Sinai. 11 are the stars of Joseph's dream. 12 are the tribes of Israel. And 13 are the attributes of God. So I just wanted to put a footnote on this. By us, 13 is a good number.
Yeah.
You get bar mitzvah at 13. You got the 13 attributes of God, 13 principles of belief by Maimonides. I mean, 13 is a really good number by us. in common society, though, our shared society, 13 took on a bad reputation. But I just want to say that it's about time we welcome 13 back into our ranks. We built buildings in New York with no 13th floor. The elevator went from 12 to 14.
Yeah. In Jerusalem, they probably have 2 13th floors.
Yeah.
Are
13 olive and 13 bed.
Yeah, yeah. Are the attributes of God, Hashem, Hashem, El, Melech?
Yeah, yep.
Right. So the attributes are when we open the Torah up on a festival, we sing them. Adonai, Adonai, El, Melech, Chanun, Barachum, Erech, Apayim, Rav Chesed, V'emet, and so on. Okay, just saw a little, that's a second footnote. Now, we're coming close to the conclusion of the Seder, and before we conclude, we sing this very famous song, Chad Gad Yah. And this must have been another crowd favorite because it's actually in Aramaic. It's not in Hebrew, so it's in language that I think the folks would have sung and understood.
Yeah, it's a story of redemption. It starts off with I had one kid goat, and my father bought for 2 coins. A zuz was a coin in Babylonia. And so when it came time for my wife and I to get married, and we had a Jewish marriage contract, what's called a ketubah, and I was toying with the idea that since the ketubah you make a promise of 200 zuzim for that your wife would get in case that you'd either left or you passed away. I said, well, according to Chad Gad, that's 100 goats.
Yeah.
And she said, if you mention goats in our ketubah, we're not getting married. So I think she's a very smart woman.
Yeah. But every year in the Passover Seder, in our Haggadah, we mention goats very often.
Yeah, one for every verse.
Why don't we, so how do you want to do this? Do you want to just kind of have a good time and sing it, or just want to jump over a couple of verses?
Yeah, we'll do it the same way, the first 4, and then we'll go to the last one.
Okay, perfect. Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah, Di Zavina Ba Bitrei Zuze, Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah, V'ata Shunra V'achal Gad Yah, Di Zvana Ba Bitrei Zuze, Chad Gad Yah, Chad
Gad
Yah, V'ata Chal Ba V'nashach L'Shunra, Di Achal Gad Yah, Tizavina ba bitrei zuze Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. V'ata chudra v'hika l'chal ba v'nashach l'shunra, diachal Gad Yah. Tizavina ba bitrei zuze Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. The very end on page 130, the second paragraph. Here we go. V'ata kadosh baruch hu v'shacha l'malach ha'maveh v'shachat l'shochet v'shachat l'torah v'shata l'maya v'chava l'nura v'sarach l'chutra v'hika l'chava v'nashach l'shunra v'achal Gad Yah v'zavina ba bitrei zuze Chad Gad Yah, Chad Gad Yah. Tell them all about it, Rabbi. I'm going to go fill up our cup of wine.
Oh, sounds good. So the song is another one of those, as I mentioned, like the house that Jack built. Then came the Holy One and killed the angel of death, who killed the butcher, who slaughtered the ox, that drank the water, that quenched the fire, that burnt the stick, that beat the dog, and that bit the cat, that ate the kid that my father bought for 2 zuzim, 1 goat, 1 goat. What goes around comes around. And don't let your karma run over your dogma.
It's almost like it can be summed up in one word, karma, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
We learn from others.
Indeed. Okay, so...
Now, if this was the second Seder, if you're using this for the second Seder, which you can, you would be counting the Omer, which is the time between Passover and Shavuot. And that's on page 132, but we're not going to do it because we're intending this to be for the first night. But if you do this for the second night, you want to include counting the Omer, and you can just do the first 3 lines.
And now we turn to page 134, and why don't we I'm going to sing that Hine Milchanum Zuman thing again.
Okay.
Just to give you another taste of it. This is the last cup of wine, so we sing like this. Hineni mukhanun zuman, hineni mukhanun zuman, hineni mukhanun zuman, l'kayim mitzvot kos revi. Kemo shekatuv b'Torah, hineni mukhanun zuman. Kemo shekatuv b'Torah, hineni mukhanun zuman. So, lift a cup of wine. And away we go. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
We need a fireplace to throw these into.
Now, want to go to 136 then? Or would you like?
Yeah.
136 is really the concluding song and thought of the Seder. It ends with L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, which really is just an aspiration, a hope for really a peace, right?
Well, and unity.
And unity.
And you know what they say in Jerusalem if you're already in Jerusalem?
Yerushalayim habnuyah.
No, they say, well, they say that too, but they also say L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim because you don't know when the year that we came here in 2003 from Israel, you know, we did not know at Passover that we would not be in Jerusalem the following year.
That's true. That's true.
So things happen. Life has a way of doing things without your permission.
Yeah, I think that's readily abundant this year. So I like to sing this tune. We're on page 136, and we end off. It starts a little mellow, but you see it ends off with bright and
hopeful.
Festive. Yeah. Chasal sidor Pesach ilchato, kechol mishpato v'chukato, kasher zachinu l'sader oto, kasher zachinu l'sader oto, kei nizke la'asoto, zach shochin me'ona, Kol bim kehaladad mimana, bikarav nahel nitechana, bikarav nahel nitechana, beduim letzion berina, l'shana haba, b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba, b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba, b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba, b'Yerushalayim.
Abnuya.
L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, shana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuya. Habnuya meaning
Rebuilt.
rebuilt, the rebuilt Jerusalem. So next year, may we all celebrate this Pesach Seder together with our spirits rebuilt, right?
Spirits rebuilt.
And renewed.
Maybe we'll see you in Jerusalem.
Yeah, exactly. So Chag Sameach, thank you for joining us, and God bless you all.
Good night.
Good night.